She has never been that nice to me in the 8 years I've been here. The things that come out of her mouth, I can't say in public the way she treats me. Now, you guys are going to have to laugh at my jokes because there are going to be a lot of jokes coming if you don't laugh at them. So, depends how much you want to hear my bad jokes will help determine. It's based upon your level of laughter. So, let's hear about it now, right? Well, anyway, I don't have that speaker's not working, so I have to be without the speaker. We've already had that concern. So, I tend to walk around anyway a lot. I have lots and lots of energy. No, I'm not bipolar. I don't. But we unfortunately had, or fortunately, we had Joint Commission show up this week. And any of you know anything about Joint Commission? You know, you pay them to tell you what you do wrong. And you pay them, and you pay them, and you pay them what you do wrong. Actually, the good news is, this is their last day. Good news is the lady that actually is doing our survey over there lives in Williamsburg and had worked for the state for 15, 16 years over at Eastern State Hospital, and so is real familiar with the community. Still has a home in Williamsburg and has been working with Joint Commission since 1995. So she's well familiar with what we do over there. And the good news is we've only had 3 very, very small problems. And all of them I caused, so that's how that works. Now, having said all that, so I'm tired, because anybody who's a administrator, you know what you go through. The staff goes through more than I do, because if anything goes wrong, I blame them anyway. But, man, I get better laughter from the patients when I talk, guys. Come on, help me out. It's because they have to laugh or they never get out. Anybody in here a college football fan besides me? Well, one. You are? I am. Oh, well, he's right up here. I'd be picking way back here. And what's your college team? LSU. Oh, God, they don't even have a team. But this LSU fan died, got to the gates of heaven, and he finally he managed to get through. Well, we're surprised, but he got through. And as they were, St. Peter's walking around with him, trying to pick out a house that he was going to live for eternity in, he says, these houses right here are the ones you get to choose from. And this LSU fan says, no, wait a minute. I'm an LSU fan. I shouldn't have to have a house like everybody else because they're all the same here. And St. Peter says, that's because we're all the same, so you pick the house, but it's all going to be the same like everybody else. This fan says, no, you don't understand. I was also a coach for them, so I should get special. He said, that's not how it works in heaven. We're all treated the same. So this LSU coach fan says, wait a minute. When I walked into the kingdom of heaven, up on this hill was this huge mansion. And it's bigger than anything all these put together. He said, well, that's God's house. He's a Nebraska Cornhusker fan. That'll teach you to speak up in my talks. Anyway, I'm Don McCourtney. I'm the CEO of the Farley Center. I've been working in the field of addiction 40 years, forever and ever and ever. And one of the things that not just obviously addicts have, but people in general have this problem with shame. And people often get confused what shame is versus what guilt is. And as a result, they don't seem to make a whole lot of progress because they don't understand some of the things that I'm going to talk about. And so we, with addictions, we spend a lot of time working with the patients, understanding they're good people. They behave inappropriately, but that doesn't make them a bad person. And I think whether you're addicted or not, it's critical to be able to separate those two out, the difference between guilt and shame. And so we'll talk about that. If you can't hear me, scream and yell. My wife does that to me all the time. My wife screams and yells at me all the time. Oh, for the love of God, we're going to have this bunch. I'll tell you what. Be prepared to be here till 1 o'clock. All right. What did you say? Or longer?
I said, at least it's warm here.
Yeah,
My heater went out this morning.
Oh, that's no good. So if you can't hear me, scream and yell at me, and I will speak up. But the title says, All Great People Are Dead. but you and me. Now, I wanted to put some other things up there, but they wouldn't let me. I happen to really like a guy that is no longer around. He's deceased, Albert Ellis. And I had the fortunate opportunity when I was a young guy before fire was invented to see this man live in Phoenix, Arizona. We had about 400 or 500 people there, about what we got here today. 400 or 500 people, and he swore like a stormtrooper. I never heard a speaker swear as much as that man did, and yet he was this expert because he developed rational motive therapy and all these other things that came off from there. So I really wanted to put some of his information on there, but they told me that was not nice, and so I couldn't do that. But there is one slide that will have a little bit of that information because he got everybody's attention in a heartbeat. So what's it mean when I say all the great people are dead, but you and me, and shame is the ultimate form of self-indulgence? I know there'll be people who disagree with what I have to say, and that's okay. We don't have to agree. And if you want to say, I don't agree or I don't understand, that's okay. Then if you don't agree, hopefully we won't spend a lot of time talking about the disagreement because I got a lot of information to cover. And if you got a big disagreement, we'll get you up here and we'll let you make a presentation. How's that? That'll fix you. Anyway, what's that mean? All the great people are dead, but you and me. What's that got to do with shame? Well, when I thought about how could I get a catchy title other than the one that I wanted, the reality is if a person has a great deal of shame and they don't like themselves, what happens is that there's this sense of, I'm different than everybody. And even though the person walks around feeling like, or indicating that they don't like themselves through their actions and their thoughts and the other stuff that goes along with shame, that on some level there's a sense of grandiosity, a sense of arrogance, a sense of somehow I'm so unique that no one can understand me. So that means I'm a pretty good person in a very unhealthy sense. And so obviously if I'm still here, I have to be alive. So I'm one of the great people who's still around. And then if you look around, those people who struggle with shame, they're saying the same things about themselves. You ever dealt with people that no matter what happened to their life, or they find out something somebody else did, or something else had happened to them, what happens in the end, whatever happened to them was worse than anybody else's? You may have had a horrible, but mine's worse. Let me tell you how bad mine is. Some of us, we grew up at a time where we got smacked around with a belt, right? And so we start sharing stories because we feel so horrible about ourselves because of some of the abuse that occurred to us. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And what happens is we start sharing war stories about the belt. So this lady says, well, I got whipped with a belt. Well, what size was your belt? Well, it was about this wide. This man says, well, you think that's bad? Mine was this wide. You ought to see the way I got it. Well, mine had hooks on it. And it threw the skin right off my body. Here, look. Fell in a barbed wire fence, but I want you to see how horrible my life is. So I'm really that bad. And there's no chance for me to be anywhere but where I'm at. And you got you feel sorry for yourself. I feel sorry for myself. We're really great people. Look at how we've been victimized. And it's a form of self-indulgence because I can continue and over again that somehow I've been mistreated, I've been abused, and God, my life is miserable and it's everybody else's fault. Not everybody believes what I just said, but the reality is that when you look at people that get stuck with this, it's because they refuse to take accountability and responsibility. Remember, these are my views. So, we'll get started. Shame, a form of self-indulgence. And as I said, that people that have a lot of shame, it becomes if you will, an addiction, lack of better words, all into itself. It's horrible, it's horrible, it's horrible, it's horrible. My God, is there anything good about you in your day? No. It's all horrible. Then we give them these unbelievable diagnoses. and then we medicate them. You can't medicate shame away. You cannot medicate shame away. It requires for you to think differently, and that's why I'm a big believer in RET, what we used to call it way back when, before fire was invented, when I first saw Albert Ellis. And we call it now CBT, REBT, DBT, all these blahs. It all comes from we have to change what we think. Huge believer in that. The sharing the feelings are great. We've got to get that venom out. But we still have to change the way we think. Because along with shame comes a tremendous amount of resentments. And resentments kill people. There's no question, whether you're addicted or whether you're not addicted, the resentments you hold on to will destroy your relationship with you and the world around you. Because it is venom. A resentment is not a feeling. It's a thought process that helps promote the shame. We're going to talk more about that. Shame versus guilt. This is where people get confused. Certainly the patients that I've dealt with throughout the years. I've dealt with other things than addiction, people that weren't addicted, if you will, on the side when I was doing some small private practice way back in close to God's country, Nevada. But primarily work with addicts, as I've indicated. So shame versus guilt. What's the difference? Anybody know? Yes, ma'am. Well, I tell you what, you raise your hand, I'm not a guy, I don't want to ask. You're kind of like when I taught a freshman class in Psychology 101. Put their little hand up and I go, hey, you. Oh, no, I'm putting my hand up again. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think of it as being, guilt is an awareness that what I've done is inappropriate. What I've done has negative consequences for myself and others. Shame is this idea that I am bad versus what I've done is bad.
Got it. That's excellent. There's a huge distinction there, and it's critical to be able to separate the two out and be able to teach that person the difference between the two. And if, as a clinician, if a provider, we don't know that, then how do we help them see the difference? And the other part is I'm a huge believer in, by the way, if I can't separate out my own guilt and my own shame, how in the hell can I teach somebody to do that? Because I can only help people get as healthy as I am. So if I'm not very healthy at all and I'm trying to help this man get healthy, he's only going to get as far as I've got. And as unhealthy as I am, anything will be very far, I might add. So, shame and guilt, but you're exactly right. Guilt. A feeling created as a result of behaving outside of your value system. That's where guilt comes from. If I have a value that I'm not to physically abuse my children, but I do, that creates guilt. If I have a value that I'm to treat people with dignity, honor, and respect and not maliciously make fun of them, and I do, that creates guilt. So when I step up my value system and I feel horrible because I did something outside my value system, how do I resolve it? Guilt is a lot easier to resolve than shame. Shame is a lifetime process because it requires so much thinking change, whereas guilt requires for me to, real simple, I share my guilt that I may have for the way I talk to this lady, and then what do? Quit behaving ways that make me feel guilty. If I'm to treat people I care about with dignity, honor, and respect, I feel guilty when I don't. I share the guilt, share the feelings, how horrible I felt because I did that, and then quit doing it. It's amazing, then that guilt will go away. But as this lady said, that it really, when you look at shame, it has a whole lot more to do with how I think about myself. Much, much harder. I may feel horrible about me, or there's something horribly wrong with me as a person because of the way I talked about you or talked to you. And not seeing that as human beings, sometimes I make mistakes, and it's okay as long as I make my amends, if you will, and I don't continue to do the same things again and again and again. And allow me to be a person instead of something beyond a person. Remember I mentioned earlier on, only the good people that are dead, all the good people are dead but you and me? If I am afraid to admit to my faults, then I absolutely will continue to live in my shame. Have to. Because I have this persona, there's nothing wrong with me because I'm afraid to share that. And it keeps me stuck. And there's no way that I can possibly get healthy or feel better about who I am. Yes, sir. Ma'am, apologize. I'm old. I don't see as far as I used to.
Now, a true sociopath, would they have no feelings of shame and guilt, or is there kind of like a continuum?
I think when you, my opinion, when you look at the Axis 2s, what we used to call them, when you look at a antisocial personality disorder, there's some of them that are far more intense than others. And we can take a look at people that, and of course we don't know yet, but the guy that shot all those people in Vegas, really what do we got there? I don't know. But because I don't know. But there's not most of the stuff I think about, it's on continuums, because I don't know, people are not made black and white. Some things, you know, for example, if my wife says to me, I don't want you to eat pizza, and I love pizza, and I sneak out and I have pizza, and is that, yeah, it could be, I guess, but the idea is that, and not feel any guilt about it because I got over on her and now I get to eat what I want. Could that be considered? I don't know, but it's a continuum. We all do things inappropriate on a continuum. Yep.
My way of thinking of it is, you know, working with a lot of people with antisocial personality disorder, the guilt, they know they did something wrong, but the shame doesn't go with it. So, you know, that's my
That's certainly a viable option, is that they can't make the connection because there isn't one.
I think sometimes shame can come for things that have been done to you that you didn't start. Like, you know, you look at rape victims or people in war and having seen things and not being able to stop things, you know. So sometimes people they put things on themselves that really aren't there at all.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about how that occurred, because that didn't just occur because they were in war or because they were physically violated. There was a whole thinking process that was inappropriate before it got there that just exacerbated and distorted what was already existing. But you're exactly right. And the other stuff, you guys are as right as I am, I guess, or wrong as I am, however you want to put it. All right. So, shame is a negative thought process that by focusing on myself, that there's something horribly wrong with me as a person. Now, because I've used this presentation with addicts and non-addicts, I just leave the word addiction on there, and you have to sort that out if you need to. But is this lady, your name?
Michelle.
As Michelle was saying, people are violated in some fashion, and then they take all that on. Well, that didn't occur because of the violation. It occurred long before then. All that violation did is magnify and distort the thinking process that was not healthy prior to that incident or incidents. So when you look at addiction, for example, people often think that addiction causes character defects. Addiction causes us to become defensive and to blame and to make excuses. Those are already there. It just magnified and distorted. When people have a lot of shame, it magnifies and distorts, and every incident that occurs in their life that reinforces it, that shame, and continues to magnify and distort that thinking process that brought them to the shame. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because none of us in this room have gone through life without being victimized one time or another. It's impossible. I mean, every time I go home and I say good evening to my wife and she screams at me, then I get victimized. It's because something I didn't do. My wife, by the way, is right over there, so I'm bad-mouth her. She told me if I embarrassed her that I would pay for it later. Anyway, so it's important to note that these things don't create the shame, it reinforces the shame. If it created it, it'd be so much easier to peel the onion, if you will. I already mentioned about the enhancement of it. And of course what it does, it reinforces and creates additional shame. So having said all that, set that basis up, so how does shame get created? That's the key, I guess, to understand, and then what do you do about it? And I've got some, in my belief, a very simple way to deal with it. How does shame get created? Well, we're going to blame Adam and Eve. Those were the problem children. And by the way, unknowns to most people, the Garden of Eden is Nebraska. Read very carefully those lines, and it will, between the lines, say Nebraska. You act like you don't believe that. No, we're talking about Nebraska's not destructive. No. So in the beginning, Adam and Eve, because as human beings, they're not perfect. And as human beings, what happens is that as we began to, if you go way back then, if you believe in them, but it begins to have people, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and on and on and on, that we teach them how to live. And if I don't know how to live, what am I going to teach my daughter, my granddaughters? What am I going to teach my family if I don't know how to live? I'm going to teach them the very things I don't know how to do very well. And they're going to believe it's gospel because Dad said it is. Or they're going to say, I'm never going to be like him. But where do they come from? Where do they draw from then? There's a void there. So they're going to be more like Dad or Mom than they anticipated. I know a guy, he says, my father was an SOB. Man, I'm glad I'm not like him. Oh, yep, you're not like him. Everything you've told me about him, you're exactly like him. But he can't believe that he is like someone that he dislikes and resents so much because he is so fragile and all that shame that he has. And that creates a lot of that narcissism because it protects me from my emptiness and from other people to see, I just broke this, from other people to see how horrible I think and feel about me. So, they come from, as I indicated, these dysfunctional family rules, and you all may know some of them, if not all of them. But when we look at dysfunctional family rules, they're consistently rigid. Very black and white. Extremely rigid. And unfortunately, they're inconsistent. At one point, it's okay for you to tell Mom and Dad that's not what you want to do. The next time you do that, Dad says, you say that to me again, I'm going to come across the room and knock that right out of your mouth. Wait a minute, I could say that? Yeah, but today's a different day. I've changed my mind. What the hell is that? That just creates what? Confusion. Because you don't know. Yeah, if this guy, your name? Keith, if Keith is my boss, you ever work for a boss where one day it's okay to do one thing and the next day you're going, oh, I can do that. And boss goes, what the hell are you doing? So if I have to work for Keith as a boss that way, I'm never going to have any sense of security because I never know what the rules are. You've worked for them, huh? It's like, oh, I'm glad you're here, Jana. It's like living with my wife. The rules are never the same. Oh, she's going to regret ever coming to one of my presentations. And because these rules are inconsistent and they're rigid, as I indicated earlier, we isolate ourselves. We don't want anybody to know how mixed up and screwed up that we really are as a human being. We keep those secrets, if you will, because if somebody knew how horrible I feel about me and think about me, they're going to think and feel about me the same way. And then what I have left? Zero. And if I don't have anything to give, I'm nothing. I already don't think I have anything to give. And I'm sure not going to let you reinforce I have nothing to give. I'm fired. That figures. All right. So let's talk a little bit about rules. Probably one of the biggest dysfunctional family rules that I've come across and have been written about. I wish I could say that I came up with all these, but I didn't. Sigmund Freud, for example, he gets so much credit for all this information that he did. Nah, he just put it in a package for us to understand. He stole from this person, that person. He just did. But he put it out there And, oh, it makes sense. If you're a big Freud fan, I apologize if I stepped on your toes. Not. But anyway, it's not okay to talk about problems. When you grow up in this family and you're told it's not okay for you to talk about a problem. We don't talk about problems in our families. We don't have them, don't you know? And I got a problem, and my mom's going, no, 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 honey, we don't talk about that. There's something wrong with you. We keep those to ourselves. Or it's, I don't even want to talk about it because mom and dad never talk about their problems. They scream and yell, rant and rave, call each other filthy names, maybe be some physical abuse. We hear the noise going behind the door in the bedroom, and it's not about what you think it is. It's they're fighting. I can't have problems. It's not okay to have them. It's not okay to talk about them, but I got a gut full, and I don't know what to do with them because it's not okay to do it. I am not to talk about these things. So where am I going to go with all that? I have a problem. There's something horribly wrong with me because people in my family don't have problems. Years and years and years ago when I was a young counselor, I had some hair on my head, and it reached my shoulders at the time. Hard to believe that, isn't it? No. We were doing a family therapy, and I was dealing with a couple parents, and I had this individual that absolutely struggled with his anger, just could not. And I said to his parents, "What happens when you guys get angry? How do you express it?" "We don't get angry." "Huh?" "No, we never get angry." "Do you get irritated?" "No." "You ever get frustrated?" "No." "Okay, well, I already know we got a real problem now, don't we?" Because that's being a pure part of a human being. It's how you handle that frustration, irritation, aggravation determines how your life's going to be. Not managing and trying to control the people that are doing it, but your reaction to it. That's how your life's going to end up being, because you can't control other people, although some of us in here think we can. The only person in this world you can control is? Absolutely. And yet we so often try to control everybody and everything but ourselves. Because don't you know, I know what's good for this lady. She just doesn't know it yet. I know what's good for my 40-year-old kids. They just don't know it yet. I've been talking to them since they were 1, how I knew everything. And so what happens is that as we get older, do you think the idea we don't talk about our problems anymore goes away? No. Because if I get, God, too bad for you, but if I get married to you and you're wanting to talk about problems and I'm pushing you away, oh no, we don't do that. So what are we going to teach our kids? They're going to make mixed messages. Dad never talks about a problem. Dad doesn't have them. Well, I'm a guy. Well, Dad doesn't have problems and I can't either. So no matter how much you want me to talk about my problems, ain't happening. It's not okay to talk about feelings. Anybody grow up in a family where you were told, knock it off, or I'll give you something to cry about? Yeah, absolutely. What was that look about of disbelief? I'll come over and knock that look right off of your face. Just keep it up, right? I brought you in the world, I'm taking you out. And so when we to not talk about feelings. What the hell you do with that energy? You got to have it vented somewhere. And when you talk about feelings, of course, people often get the mistaken belief that these feelings are caused by other people. They're caused by external. No, my feelings come from whom? Myself. They come from my thinking. Not the event that occurred externally. It comes from me and how I view what occurred based upon whatever is in my computer upstairs. And someone like me, those computer circuits don't work very well, particularly at 64 years of age. You find out how quickly they don't make the connections they used to. I'm not going to pick on you. You're laughing at me. Are you used to those computer pieces not working so well sometimes?
I'm 67, so you're just a kid.
Good. One time I said something to somebody there. They weren't that old. They just got premature gray. Man, did I feel bad. So I was real careful with it because you're looking at me going, oh, wait a minute now. Maybe I stepped into it again. But it's not okay to talk about how I feel. I remember one point when I was talking to my oldest daughter and I was letting her share with me how she felt. My father was there, and he's not a big believer of feelings, by the way. She was sharing with me how she felt, and I sat and listened to it, and I said, well, that's fine. You can have those feelings, but we're still not going to do it. Well, it's not fair. Okay, that's fine. Go to your room. My dad says, how do you let her talk to you that way? Don't you know? Dad, it didn't work so well for me. Why is it going to work so well for her? And she's a spitting image of my father and me when it comes to attitude. Didn't work. Didn't work for him either, by the way. But that's because that's all he knew at the time. And so to talk about feelings are so important, and yet for most people, it is so hard to do because I become vulnerable. Anybody been around pet therapy, pet dogs, the dogs they use for pet therapy? They're incredible animals. Fortunately, we got one. We got her trained. I just love her to death. Rescued her and made her pet therapy dog. It's amazing what they can get human beings to do that we can't do. Animals are incredible because there's no sense of judgment. That dog crawls up on your lap, and you're petting that dog, talking to that dog, and you're starting to spill your guts. That dog's still licking your face. It's like that old story. If at some point you put your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife in the trunk with a dog, close that trunk, come back an hour later, who's going to be happy to see you? Just saying, man, I'm telling you, not going to work so well. So it's amazing what we can do. When we first got this Gracie, this dog that we rescued, she was a little bitty puppy. And I brought her in here, and I know I wasn't supposed to, but bosses are up in Richmond. I do what I want down here at Lutheran. My defiance is still very high. But we had a physician, because we treat physicians as well as other professionals and non-professionals across the way. And we were trying to get this guy to make a connection, and he just wouldn't do it. No matter what we did, we took him out to the big horses. We have equine therapy for the professionals once every other week, and he just wouldn't connect. So I had this little furry ball of nothing at that time in my arms, and he was sitting looking like hell. And I said, you had a tough day. Yeah, it's been a horrible day. And he looked at the dog, and he looked at me and said, could I hold your dog? I said, if she'll let you. He reached out, and that little puppy grabbed right onto him, and her tail's wagging. She starts looking at his face, and he begins to sob. He could do that with the dog. He couldn't do that with a human being. All because of what he was taught way back when. It's not okay to talk about feelings. You can't have them. But you get a little dog in front of you, it's okay. Or a little cat, whatever your favorite animal is, elephant. Whatever. So anyway, it's not okay to talk about feelings. That helps to create shame because I'm having feelings and nobody else seems to. The only way you talk about feelings in this kind of craziness, scream, yell, call names, and make threats. Those aren't feelings. That's total abuse. Oh, yes. Must always be strong. Must always be good. Must always be perfect. Anybody, some of you in here, I'm sure, particularly some of the guys and older, maybe 67-year-old guy over there, we grew up and our father at about 5 quit hugging us before we went to bed. It became a nice handshake. What, age 5 being a handshake? Hey, I'm a man. That's okay. What 5-year-old needs a handshake before they go to bed? Being a male or female. They need what? Love you. So what message does that send? You must be strong. Make a mistake in this family? Are you kidding me? You make a mistake, there's something wrong with you as a person. Don't you see what I don't make any mistakes? Because I blame you for everything as a daughter or as a wife. My God, the kids, we wonder why our kids get all screwed up. It's because we don't teach them how to live. We teach them how not to live. We don't teach them how to make connections. We don't teach them how to make a connection outside of themselves, human beings, something greater than them, and themselves. They got to have that spiritual connection. And I think we're starting to figure that out finally in the last number of years about how important in medicine, whether it is physical medicine or psychology, God only knows why you want to be in a psychology, but that you have to have the spiritual connection. Spiritual connection is the ability to have positive relationships with me and things outside of me, including something greater than me. Whatever the hell that greater is. I don't care. But something. Because the craziness I grew up in, the craziness that occurs to me is greater than me, so something out there is greater than me. I'm not talking about religion either, by the way. So I must be perfect and I must always be happy. How can anybody always be happy? We got a room full of, we got a bushel baskets, if you will, full of addicts over there that always wanted to be happy. And the drug did it at one point, and then it come back and bit them, and now it's more miserable than they've ever been. Don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. Give your last toy, the favorite toy you have, to a brother that is 8 years younger than you, shouldn't be messing with that toy, so you got to give it to them because you're your oldest brother and you're not going to be selfish. So what happens? You give it and the toy's broken. Well, that's what you're supposed to do, don't you know? He's your little brother. You're not to be selfish. There's a difference between selfish and self-centeredness, isn't that correct? What's the difference? Anybody know? Oh, I knew there'd be one time I'd catch you. Selfishness and self-centeredness are not even close to being the same. Self-centeredness is all I do is think about me. I don't care about you. I don't care about you. I don't care about you. I don't care about any of you. Just me. I don't care what consequences or what my behaviors may do to you. It's only for Don McCourtney, because don't you know, when God died and went to heaven, I am now God. Now, some of you may not like what I just said, but that's self-centeredness. Selfishness is, I will take care of me and be aware of your needs as we go along. And if I can compromise what I need at the expense that it's not going to destroy me after a conversation, and you compromise and I compromise, then what happens? That's being selfish. Because if I don't take care of me, who in the world is going to do it for me? If I don't take care of my needs, how am I going to take care of my children? How am I going to take care of the patient that have been given to us to allow for us to become, to teach them to live and how to think differently? But if I'm not taking care of me, how can I do that? Because as I said earlier, if I don't take care of me and I'm really not very healthy, there is no way in the world I can teach them any more than I know. I don't care what tricks, I don't care what therapeutic techniques, I don't care what you have, because if you don't understand them and just do them by rote because you don't have an internal idea what that all means, it won't work. It can't. We don't help people get well by therapeutic techniques. We help people get well because of who we are. Most of us have been taught this already. What's the biggest relationship, what's the biggest opportunity for therapy to work? Our tricks, our techniques, what our training is, or what? Our humanism that allows that relationship to grow. Gotta be. Nothing else. I tell you what, throughout my career, when I confront addicts, and some people that are in here know, I can be very confrontive if you can't tell. Very matter of fact. However, along with that is they know I'm human. Because when they're hurting, they see my hurt with them. They see it in my eyes. When they're doing well, my arms around them, God, doing a great job. When they're scared, they see my fear for them. And it's just not words. They see it in my eyes. They see it in my actions. So all these other things don't mean a whole lot if I can't show them that. And so if I'm not taking care of me, which is being selfish, how in the world can I help anybody else? How can I help my children? How can I help my patients? How can I help anybody? I can't. Because I'm all messed up too. Dysfunctional family, right? Oh yes, this big one here. Do as I say, not as I do. Isn't that remarkable? I'm an adult, so I can do whatever I want. You're a kid. Now, I can be any nasty and ornery and anything I want to be because I'm the adult. You're the kid. You got to do what I tell you to do. Well, but Dad, you did. That doesn't matter. I pay the bills. You know that food you put in your belly? That was mine. You know that nice car you drive as my wife? That's mine. Oh, crap. Do as I say, not as I do. I remember when I was a young guy, I had 3 brothers. One of my brothers got to bad-mouthing, jawing at my mom. Wasn't a good decision. My father, who was very opinionated, who was active in his addiction at the time, comes scooting out of where he was. How dare you talk to your mother that way? My brother, at about 16 years of age, looked at my father and says, you do. Man, you can imagine the time, what happened then. It wasn't pleasant. And so, do as I say, not as I do. It's amazing. Our children watch us more than we watch them. The patients watch us in our mannerisms, the things we say and we don't say, a lot more than we do. And they're attuned to it, and they'll tell everybody in the world. Did you know at the last therapy session, she yawned when I said this? What? You weren't yawning because you were tired, because you're bored. It's that you've been seeing thousands of patients that day and you're just tired. Not okay to play. You can't have fun. Not being able to have fun. If I can't have fun, and I want to have fun, and all I'm supposed to do is to work and not enjoy life, what kind of a miserable life is that? I want to go do something for fun, and I do, and I feel something's wrong with me. I should be at work working. I should be seeing those patients. I should, and you'll see what I'm about to say on another slide. Shouldhood leads to shithood. I really wished I'd thought that up. But who thought that up was a guy by the name of Albert Ellis. Remember I told you how he swore like a stormtrooper and about 200 people, 2,000, 100 people, 200 people, whatever it was. But I believe that. Shouldhood leads to shithood. I can't play, therefore I'm out and trying to enjoy my life, and I can't because I'm not to have fun. And we get told that as kids. Sometimes very directly. Quit playing. Quiet down. Your dad's trying to watch a football game. I see. So the kid's playing is less important than dad's football. That makes sense. Or you go, can I go to the neighbors to go play? Nope. I got work for you to do. That parent had no idea they had work for that person to do. None. They just, for whatever reasons, they didn't get to have fun. Why should you? You can excel in football, basketball, basket weaving, whatever it is, but you're not going to get the kind of verbal recognition as if you went to work, you found your first job, and all that armor, oh man, that's great. You got a great job. Yeah, but Dad, I just scored 4 touchdowns here the other night. Oh, hell, anybody can do that. Let's talk about the money. That's what you're going to excel at. That's crazy. So when that kid becomes an adult, you can't get him or her to have any fun, and they're married to someone who wants to have fun, and it ain't going to happen. And those kids get mixed messages. Mom's saying, oh, we're going to have fun. Dad says, oh, no. Or Dad's saying, I'm going to have fun. Mom's saying, oh, no, we don't laugh about this stuff. We don't laugh in this place. Because it's not okay to laugh. See, I think I'm funny. Nobody else does. But I think I'm funny when I say my jokes. But see, I can tell you, I was taught it wasn't okay to have fun. By God, you got recognition for being successful at work. And somebody grabbed me by the nape of the neck and threw me down a few times and says, you got to learn to have fun, boy. Oh. And now I may have gone overboard. Oh, God, do I like to have fun now. And don't rock the boat. No matter what, and this ties in what you were saying, no matter what happens to you, you caused it. You don't rock the boat. You keep everything copacetic. Nothing, absolutely nothing do you say anything about. Because you caused everything. You caused all the problems, don't you know? And if you don't believe me, ask Dad and Mom. Mom and Dad's in a hell of a fight. Who caused that? You did. Well, how did I cause it? You got bad grades. I got 4 A's and a B. Yeah, but you're not perfect, and now Dad's mad. You missed that tackle when you're playing football. Dad's all been out of shape. He's drunk as a skunk, sitting up there in the rafters, saying how great his son is. He misses a tackle, and his buddies jab him a little bit. Now Dad comes home madder than hell, dumping all that venom on that son. And so what's the son do? Nothing. He's not to rock the boat. He's supposed to understand that Dad's right and he's wrong and he has to be perfect. And my God, don't say a thing. Otherwise, you're going to get all kinds of hell coming your direction. So if I do begin to assert myself, if I do begin to rock the boat, everybody around me goes, whoa, we don't do that. You're bad-mouthing your... No, I didn't bad-mouth my dad. I just shared with him about how I thought about something and how I felt about that. And I want to talk about it. No. You don't rock the boat. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, addiction, all the other kinds of things that can happen in dysfunctional families. Then we know dysfunction, as you were saying, is on a continuum. And so we don't rock the boat. People get married and they're in an abusive, physical abusive relationship, sexual abusive relationship. You don't say anything. That's your cross to bear because that's what you got told, directly or indirectly. And no wonder you feel like hell. No wonder that you've got all these ugly feelings and thoughts inside. There must be something wrong with me because I should take this and be grateful for what I got and not question anything. Because Dad said so, or Mom said so. And then the communications are very indirect. They triangulate. This lady's my sister, this lady's my sister, and this lady's my sister. I never talk directly to them. I talk about them. Why? That's what Mom and Dad did, right? We got Keith, is that right? We got Keith over here, and I forgot your name. Michelle. Keith and Michelle are Mom and Dad to the 4 of us. And Michelle comes running to us. Oh, your dad, you know what he did? Oh, my God, blah, 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 blah. Really? Dad does the same thing. You know, blah, 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 blah. And we're thinking, I never hear them talk to each other. They talk about each other, maybe even in their presence. Right to the kids. Your dad, he never respects me. Dad's sitting right there. But she's not telling him. He's fuming. And then you don't talk about sex. God only knows how we learn about it, but we don't talk about it, the majority of us. And now I know my grandparents had sex. I just don't want to know about it. My grandfather, God bless him, he was a surrogate father for me, and I was very fortunate to have him in my life. At about 82 years of age, the man passed away. And I still miss him. But he was about 80, 81. Bedridden last few years of his life. And he's talking to me on the phone. He says, you know, Donnie, I can still do it. That's right. And I'm thinking, oh, Grandpa, I hope that's not what we're going to head towards. But he did. Grandpa, he says, I think I still can. Grandma just won't let me. Oh, Grandpa, no. Oh, God, I don't want to talk to him about that. That just tells you the kind of relationship we had, I guess. He was an inspiration for so many ways for me. Wow. Well, if at 81 I'm still thinking about that, I might not be so bad off after all. But talk about sex. We learn about sex from whom? Now, I know things have changed because I'm an old guy. Used to be from the books, used to be from the magazines. Hell, now you get on the computer and you get all this porn. But it doesn't talk about love. It just says you have 2 objects. And each person is objectified and they perform. End of story. What's that got to do with love? One's got an erection and the other wants it, supposedly. Boom, there we are. It's done. And that's what sex is about. Because Mom and Dad ain't going to talk about it. It's embarrassing. So when it comes time to have that part of a person's relationship and they want to be a part of making love rather than just having sex, it's hard to do. Because everything is, it is embarrassing, it is dirty, it is objectified, it is dehumanized, whatever the things we've attached to that. Rather than see that's a part of when you love somebody to help promote or to show or to on a level that is to be for those two alone. But hell, Mom and Dad's not going to talk about that. How many of your parents sat down and went through to you, not how you get pregnant or how you get somebody pregnant, that's a small piece of it, but what it's all about. My dad just did a hell of a job with that. Took me into his office and says, you know about, I'm 17 years of age. Now he's going to talk to me. You know about sex? Yes, good. Let's go watch a football game. That worked. Don't talk about sex, and yet we come from somebody that all ties into all of this. I can't talk about, my kids come to me, they want to talk about, I'm not going to tell them everything at age 4, but we don't go, shh, we don't talk about that, honey. That's not okay. You keep that to yourself. Girls, don't talk about that, for the love of God. All these things then create this huge, massive amount of confusion in our head, or in the person's head that we're trying to deal with. Because I want to talk about sex. I want to find out what it means to have sex and the difference between that and love. I want to talk about how I feel as attached to this, as attached to always be perfect. How do I communicate this appropriately? I can't. I don't know how. There's something horribly wrong with me inside because I am a loser and I can't live up to these rules. And yet to be accepted by my family, I must live by the rules. And those are the rules. They're never the same. Never consistent. There's certain words that help determine whether somebody has a whole lot of shame. I must, I ought, I have to. Thus the term shouldhood leads to shithood. That's how Ellis tied those together. All the shoulds and oughts and what it does to destroy me as a human being. What's wrong with saying it's okay to be imperfect? Because we all are. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to talk about my feelings as long as it's done in a healthy, appropriate way. And then be taught how to do those things. It's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. You notice how I set that up in the very beginning? Yeah. Because I'm not, this is my thoughts. These are what I've been taught. This is how I've come to conclusion after all these many years of whatever I've been around. Doesn't make me right, even though I think I am. Doesn't make me right. It just makes another perspective. It's like we're all blind, right? Remember that elephant? And they're living, the elephant and these blind men, and they're trying to describe what that elephant, this animal must be. One's got a tail, one's got a tusk, one's got the trunk, and one's got an ear, and they're all trying to describe the animal. All different perspective. Any of them wrong? No, it's just what they've got. All right, I'm being poked at by Gary over there. And he keeps poking at me. It's like poking at a grizzly bear. So I'm letting you guys just take a break. Take a break. Good Lord. There was a, anybody in here that understands, where's that young man? Oh, there he is. You know, one of the things that's interesting, and I'll expose a little bit about part of my background, not expose my body, that's not what you want to see on my end, but I was taught you didn't touch people. I was taught if you hugged a woman, you did it for one reason. Not appropriate healthiness, but that's what I was taught. And so when I touch this guy, I don't even know this guy, but I touch him on the shoulder, that's foreign to me. It's gotten better, but just to let him know I like him. And I mean, anybody who would put up with my joke about LSU, you gotta like. But here's another one coming. That'll teach you. Sit up front with me. He already told me he's got me figured out. Those of you probably don't know this, but you know the University of Nebraska has the greatest college football team on earth. And on my TV, they haven't lost a game in the last 55 years. My TV is stuck back into the 90s. But Bob Devaney was the coach that's been attributed to bringing Nebraska to the national stage for football. And after that, Osborne, and after that, a bunch of losers. But anyway, Bob Devaney, you know, if you don't know this, Nebraska has the longest running active filling of stadium in NCAA history. It is always full. I mean, I saw Nebraska's Gots at football game team. So one day, Bob Devaney was down on the field, and they were ahead of LSU, 65-2. And so what happened? He's looking around. He's used to, you know, seeing how the fans are reacting to the usual blowout that they did back in those days, unlike what happens to them now. And what happens is that he sees this empty seat. And he's thinking, well, that's not right. So everybody goes into the halftime, and he comes up to the empty seat, and there's this lady sitting there, and he says, ma'am, I've seen that the seat's been empty the entire game. Our seats aren't empty here. And she said, yeah. She said, that's my husband's seat. Oh, is he sick? Is he in the hospital? You know, could you not put somebody to, a family member, a friend to fill that spot? She goes, nope, they're all at his funeral. That's Nebraska fans. You can use that one for LSU. I got one at the end, and I cleared past the people who make sure I don't swear, and they said I could share it, but that's at the end. Okay, so what consequences? Because they told me that they're hammering to have me over there here in about 40 minutes. So what happens when you look at consequences of these rules? You end up feeling inferior because there's something wrong with you because you can't possibly feel, and that makes you flawed. So if I'm not as good as her, if I'm not as good as him, and I can't obey and I can't follow these rules, there is something horribly wrong with me. I am flawed, therefore I have a bunch of shame going on. A whole lot of thinking errors, a whole lot of thinking problems that continue in my head that when somebody's bad at me, it's my fault. If I make a mistake, there's something horribly wrong. So now I'm flawed. And nothing I can do, no matter how many times I share how I feel, no matter how many times I talk about anything that there's something wrong with me, and I walk through a doorway, and every time I walk through a doorway, I say something positive about myself. Why it doesn't work? It doesn't work. Why? Because the problem is inherently, I think I'm inherently broken. That's the problem. So what do I got to do? So when we continue, I'm not good enough. As I said, this whole thing, I'm not acceptable to others. So if I walk into a room and people are whispering, who do you think they're talking about? Me? See, that's part of that. All the good people are dead except for you and me because I'm so horribly bad that makes me so horribly good, and you're going to talk about me when I walk in a room. Can you imagine that? Every time I walk in the room and you're whispering, you got to be talking about me. You look my direction, I know you're looking at me. Oh, for the love of God, what arrogance that is, right? All right. I'm not going to go through all the details of this because you guys, I assume most of you guys, if not all of you guys, have a background as a clinician or something on that order. Hopefully you don't have a PhD. Then you'll have, you know what PhD stands for, don't you? Pile higher and deeper, right? I have a BS, both, you know what that is. MS, more the same. PhD, pile higher and deeper. Now, if you're an engineer, you're a post hole digger. Oh, come on, work with me. I thought I had you guys worked up for this one. Man, where's Gary at? What happens? So in order to not have to confront the shame, to deal with the shame effectively, to deal with what I want to be versus what I see me as, I got to blame. I got to blame the world for my problems. I have to blame my childhood for my problems. Well, where does all that blame get you? More of the same? Absolutely. Because with blame and denial and excuses and aggression and withdrawal or emotionally numb, all that is associated with this shame. And what ends up happening, I'm resentful. Resentment is not a feeling. It's a thought process. And everybody who has resentments, guess what's tied in with that? Always self-pity. You can't separate the two. They're one and the same. And they're a thought process of, it's not fair. And some young lady, Alexis, came to me and she says, you know what? Part of the problem we have is that we believe life should be fair. Ella said in the beginning, it is not fair. Get used to it, grow up, and accept it. And I'm not going to start a political quagmire here, but I'm going to say it anyway. Even I don't have any handlers in here, do I? Nope, they're outside. Part of the problem we have is everybody has to think that everything in their life is fair. Crap. It's not fair I have to wear contacts. It's not fair that I can't see better than I do. It's not fair I can't fly an airplane. It's not fair that I can't do the things I used to do when I was younger. It's just not fair. Well, so what? Get over it. We tell our kids, things in life aren't going to be fair, honey. It's just the way it is. Get over it. Then we become big people. Now everything's supposed to be fair. That's the root of this whole mess, I believe. So all this stuff is the way that, as the shame persists, is a way to survive in a world that we are feeling sorry for ourselves. We resent because we see ourselves as victims. Every one of us has been victimized. Some of us to a greater degree than others. I don't want to take that away from anybody. But if I live in the world of victimization, how in the hell do I ever be happy? Because if I'm victimized, it's not fair. It's not fair. Oh my God, I got a bushel basket full of people running around there. It's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. Good. We already know it wasn't fair. It should have never happened. But what are you going to do now? Because you hang on to that resentment, you hang on to that self-pity, you hang on to that thinking process, it's not fair, then you can't ever change. Because you're focused on the unfairness rather than what you can do to make your life better. Now, it may sound cold, heartless, but it's not. I'm not saying you don't do it with empathy. I'm not saying that at all. But my God, things aren't fair. It's not fair. My neighbor's got a Corvette and I got an old truck. I mean, it's just not fair. There's a lot of things in my life I don't think is, but that's just a part of that whole victimization. That whole idea that there's something wrong with the world rather than there's something wrong with how I manage the world. That's related to me. I didn't say control. I said manage. Big difference. And one of the things that we know, that when people come and have all this shame, let's see if I got it up there. I think I did. No, I didn't. And that's control. These are all ways to control. But control means what? To get things my way. And I will do any number of things to have it happen, work out my way. I will be aggressive, I'll withdraw, I'll be charming, I'll blame, whatever works out. But I want you guys to do what I want you to do. It ain't going to happen. Can you imagine this lady here being my wife and I say, honey, now I want you to do this, 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 and this? She's going to look at me and go, oh, yeah? Are you kidding me? I'll knock your butt in the next month. Keep talking to me that way. You can't control your wife. Can you control your kids? No. Anybody got kids? Yeah. Can you control them? No. If they're this tall, can you control them? No. When they're born and they're crying and whatever's going on with them, they're not feeling good or they're tired and how babies get, can you control them? No. When they're this tall, can you? Yes, ma'am.
You were on to something there. You know, I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say there are ways to control. There are also ways to avoid, which goes back to the dysfunctional family rules, which were inherently avoidance as well. And I think that the attempt to avoid almost precedes the attempt to control.
The fear drives the control.
But the fear is of the thing that's being avoided.
Don't disagree. We're saying the same thing. I just tie that. Because fear, if you look at human beings, people are driven by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fears. Somebody says, "What of what?" I said, "What day, at what time? What's the circumstances of what they're trying to avoid?" And I don't. That could be argued, I guess, but I don't know how, because people are driven by fears. Think about it. And again, I don't want to start a big political mess here, but at one point in the United States of America, we had won the wars. We had all these weapons, and by God, we were invincible. Safe at last. And then somebody came in and disrupted our world. And we became very, very afraid once again. People run on fear. And it's how we manage those fears within us to, as you said, some we need to avoid because it doesn't make any sense to run that route. Others we need to talk about. Others we need to change the way we think because our thought processes help to create so many fears that may or may not be real. Most fears are imaginary that we make up in our head. Like I said, I walk in a room and these guys are all laughing. Must have laughed at me. I know I'm funny, but I'm not that funny. Jamie back there, she laughs at everything I say, but I don't think I'm that funny. So she must be laughing at me. You see, all that craziness that we run in our head. You're exactly right. All right. It's being emotionally labile. That's that regression. We act like 2-year-olds. It's amazing how people jumping down, rant and rage, scream and yell, and go, look at me, look at me, look at me, look how badly I've been mistreated, and not pay a bit of attention how they mistreat other people. That moral indignation they have of what's happened to them, and I can take it out on you. And you got to understand, it's okay for me to do that because you don't understand what I went through. If you have a daughter, and I decide that, when I'm a young guy, way back when, and your daughter and I get together, and because I got this abusive family I grew up in, and all these crazy rules, and I abuse your daughter, and I say, well, I got taught all this stuff, who are you going to be mad at? And it should be. Not my family. It's me that acted those ways. It's me that is responsible. 100%. Because if it's not, then I can abuse anybody I want because of my being a victim that creates, and then all this shame that goes along with this whole dynamic, and you can't hold me accountable. I did it because. You're right. You did it because that's what you chose to do at that moment in that time. Now, I know people want to argue about that. Great. Then that means I can abuse the people you love, and you can't hold me accountable. Somebody abused my kids, or my wife, or I guess, more importantly, my dogs, there's going to be trouble. All right. I know, I hear about that one later too. And I've talked about the self-pity and the resentments and how they're one and the same. And the other thing is we go around and we please everybody at our own expense. So part of the way that we avoid the shame is that we please everybody, because if everybody's okay with me, then I'm okay. And I please people at my expense. You want what, when? Okay, I'll do that. Oh, you need some help? I'll do that. And here I am, wore out, beat to death, and by God, I'm going to take care of the whole world and not me, back to not be selfish. And I wonder why I'm not happy. And of course, when all hell breaks loose, who am I mad at? You? You took advantage of me. You, because you didn't tell me no, or you don't need to do that. It's all about the world. So with shame, there's a lot of external, blaming the world, all the garbage out here, rather than what am I doing to make my life better? I had a lady one time, she showed up at this office, and they put her in with me because it was an emergency, quote unquote, and she came into my office and she says, and I was talking to her, and she said, I had an epiphany. Now she's 50-some years of age, had been in therapy off and on since she was 16, and she now knows why she is the way she is. I thought, oh, this ought to be good. And she said, I said, well, what's your epiphany? I never emotionally connected with my mother at age 5. Well, I tend to be rather blunt. And I told her exactly what I thought about that epiphany. And she said, oh, I hate you. I said, okay. There's somebody else to hate. And I thought, oh, I'm going to catch hell for this. She goes home. 3 weeks, 3 weeks later, I get a phone call. It's from her. And she was very nice. She said, and she'd been in and out of therapy her entire life. She said, I told my husband what you said. He said, I've been telling you that for years. It isn't about now. When you were 5, it's about what you're doing now. And she said, why hadn't any other therapists? I said, I don't know. Probably they did and you didn't hear it. You just heard it from me. She says, I don't need therapy. I said, I know that. You've been over-therapized. You keep looking for everything but you. How she did with it beyond that, I don't know. But the reality is that, does everybody need that kind of a confrontation? No. But 50-some years of age, and I'm going to talk about what happened when I was 5 after years and years. Come on. All right, intellectualization, we all know what that means. And so minimizing the impact that I have on other people, because it's always people harming me. And then, now, there's the thing that the shithood leads to shithood. That isn't my thought processes. I threw it up there and was told I couldn't, but I snuck it in here anyway. Because the reality is, when I'm fortunate dealing with addicts, one of the things that I know that helps them to reduce the shame is to be around people who struggle with it. Because they can learn that I'm not the only person in the world. I mean, if I'm a therapist and I'm telling this lady all kinds of things, but if I'm sitting here, sorry about that. If I'm sitting here in part of an AA meeting or NA meeting or ACO meeting or whatever kind of meeting, and I got a whole group of people saying the same thing, I can't be all that bad, don't you know? My God, there's a lot of people out there like me. And amazing there is. There's more people out there like me than not like me. And once I get that, that helps to disconnect that I'm unique, help me to disconnect from the resentments and the self-pity, because by God, other people had the same thing. It's so amazing, the alcoholics, the drug addicts, how fortunate they are that they have a place to go after treatment to find out they're the same. So many people out there the same. And then we have some other 12-step programs that are similar that help with that as well. Yes, ma'am.
Even with that, I see people with terminal uniqueness, and they can find ways to exclude themselves out of AA and NA.
Yep, absolutely. There are people that's right, that whole idea of terminally unique. And they'll kill themselves, that's the mean terminalness. And if they don't kill themselves physically, they kill themselves in their relationships that they're capable or they can have, and they live a life of loneliness. You don't have to be addicted to have a life alone. That's so damn painful to be that lonely that I can't connect with another human being and find out this lady, your name? Sue, and are exactly alike. I may be 20 years older than her, but we are alike when it comes to being a human being. That's what's important. Because we're all the damn same as humans. I don't care the color of your skin. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care the color of your hair. I don't care how bright or how unbright you are. We're all the same. Because if I cut everybody in here and I cut me, we're all going to bleed in the same color. And if I want people to care about me, you all want people to care about you, we're all the same. We're all afraid of what people are going to think of us. Particularly if I want somebody to like me. So we're all the same. by having a group of people that think and see the world the way I do, and for that to be reinforced, well, I am the same, helps to really break down a lot of barriers very quickly. People don't like doing group because of the reasons we've talked about. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is, in the whatever went out, I talked about, you'll learn about the steps, and I'm not going to go through each step, but I'm going to explain to you how it works. And I believe that those steps are not about addiction. They're about living. Anybody in here who's in recovery knows that. I was addicted at 15 and a half. And I was fortunate. I got sober at age 21. I'm now 64. It wasn't easy because I got kicked out of treatment, because you can imagine I probably wasn't the easiest patient to get along with. But that's about me. It's not about them. So anyway, I'm a huge believer that the steps are there on how to live. That's just all. They're ways to live. And they talk about religion in AA on top of it. It's about being spiritual. Remember I mentioned a little while ago that being spiritual means having a positive relationship with me and everything that's outside of me, including something greater than me. That's spirituality, having a positive relationship. When you have shame, you don't have positive relationships. And so these steps, as far as I'm concerned, are just guidelines for people to live. And let me tell you, I come from a family full of addiction. I have family members who aren't addicted, and I have a brother that works the steps, and he is not addicted, and his life generally is pretty good. Why? Because he understands how to live, and because there's the simplicity of the steps that people don't understand. It's a way to simplify some of the things that need to be done. Doesn't solve all the problems, we know that, but it's a step, a direction, a tool in order for that to happen. All right. First step really talks about the unmanageability and the powerlessness. And there are steps out there, or programs out there, that use these steps. They remove the alcohol and the drugs, and they put in emotions, relationships. They put in any variety of things. SA, Sex Anonymous, SAA, or SLA, Sex Anonymous, but they all use those steps. It's all about living. So a person starts out by saying, you know, whatever it is that I got going on, I've got this negative relationship, and because of this negative relationship that I have, that I'm trying to make my life better, it's really causing some severe consequences. That's really all it is. I have a negative relationship, and that relationship's causing consequences. With whatever it is, it could be control and power. And there are people out there, they can't breathe without telling people what to do. You ever had a boss like that? He's micromanaging or her micromanaging every step of the day, and you go, my God, why don't you just come do my job? You're so damn smart, just do it. So there are people that got to come to grips that admit that they are not power. They don't have any power over the rest of the world. That's where the control issue comes in. And they get beat down every time, as you know. All right, so we look at the step 2. All that says is that if we want to quit feelings that we have to try to use something to escape with, whatever that something is, because we know control is a way to escape from my own fears and anxieties and my own sense of vulnerability. When you decide you don't want to live that way anymore, you're going to have a hole created. Because people who are control freaks, that's why we call them control freaks. They spend their entire day trying to control the world, and if they decide they want to quit doing that, how are you going to fill the hole? How are you going to make it so that emptiness is no longer, that hole is no longer there, so there's not an emptiness? Because we all know, those of us who've ever tried to quit eating or change the way we diet or way we eat, so we can maybe lose a pound or two, that if we don't do something positive to replace that emptiness, what's going to happen? Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to come back, isn't it? Yeah, we lose. We can't be successful. So we got to have something that we can put in place of whatever it is that we've been using to try to make our lives better and to allow us to escape from our own humanism and that shame that we have as a human being. And because there's an emptiness, it's got to be positive. When I used to work with adolescents, my God, one of them, an event, one of those snot lockers would say, "Can I use Satan as my higher power?" No. And they want to argue. It has to be positive. Well, he could be. Smack him in the snot locker, you know? Because what are you talking about? But you know, kids, they're defiant, rebellious, just like we are. We're just more sophisticated sometimes than they are. So we got to find something that's better or stronger than us. Whatever it is, it's got to be positive. To fill the hole created for whatever it is we want. I admit that I am a control freak. And these are the consequences. Now, what am I going to do to fill the hole created when I decide I no longer want to be a control freak? How am I going to get that connection to be able to make sure that I don't continue to be a control freak? I've got to find something greater than me to fill the hole. Along with that, then what you got to do is you got to trust that. You've trusted by being a control freak, life's going to turn out. And it's miserable. I'm going to control this, I'm going to control that, blah, 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 blah. And as a result, I trust me and my control, and everything will turn out. It didn't, so what are you going to do now? So I'm going to trust whatever I discover in 2, I'm going to trust it by making decisions to interact with it. It's called made a decision to turn my will and life with the care of God as I understand Him. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn me and everything else over to whatever it is I discovered. When we're involved with being a control freak, we turned everything over to what? Our control. We think we control everything. So you're in trouble, I'm going to control it. You're in trouble, I'm going to control it. I'm in trouble, I'm going to control. I'm going to make sure that I have absolute control because I know how to make it work. It didn't work. I'm going to have to trust that that's going to, this newfound thinking process, this newfound relationship is going to allow for me to begin to trust it. And how I do it? Same I did with my control issues. I communicate. That's what the 11th step is about of the AA program, communication. When we were, if Jamie is my sister and I'm a control freak and I'm busy trying to help her run her life, and now I decide, and I'm communicating the heck out of her, talking to her, not a good communication, but I am just telling her right and left what to do and how wrong she is, blah, 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 blah. And then what happens is I'm not talking and I'm not listening because I'm the center. So the 11th step just simply says I'm going to seek through prayer and meditation to develop the relationship that I discovered in 2 so I feel comfortable enough to trust it. That's all there is to it. The people hear word prayer, oh my God, it's religion. Prayer means to talk. And if you're a control freak, like some of us are, you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk. And then you listen, not to anybody else but you. It just doesn't work. And so what happens is that you talk to and listen to this power you discovered in 2 so you can trust it. Now where is that going to come from? How are you going to find that? The secret is what? People. The very thing a control freak is afraid of, people. The very thing that people have a lot of shame about, or that people have shame and disconnecting themselves, they have to put back in their life is people. And that's scary. The very thing we're running from, the very thing we're afraid of are people, and that's what we have to put back in our life. Because most of us never had it to begin with. And it's amazing how when we put a person back in our life, just how, or we put people back in our lives, and we're finding we're the same, that shame just magically just kind of disappears. It's not as aggressive. It's not as predominant. Because there's other people like me. I know of a situation, this young lady had to be about 11 or 12 maybe, went to her parents and she said, Mom, Dad, whoever, I'm weird. you can imagine what that did to that parent. Well, what do you mean you're weird? Well, I'm not like the other kids I'm with. What do you mean? Well, they don't think the way I do. How's it different? Well, see, this young lady was very artistically talented, whether it had to do with art, painting, or music. Man, that part of her brain just boom. And most of the people around her didn't have that skill set. You got a knucklehead like me. Well, if you're kidding me, you want me to draw something? Forget it. You ought to see my handwriting. But here's this person that, from what I was told, very, very, and the parents did a great thing. The parents said, you know, you're not weird. There are people out there that think and have that special thing that you have. You just haven't connected with them yet. And what they did is they got her to connect with other artists, musics. It was amazing how that kid blossomed and didn't see herself as weird. Something as simple as that. They put people in her life. And so those steps, 2, 3, and 11, allow for us to put people in our lives so that way we can take away that sense of uniqueness that somebody said, terminal uniqueness, right, Michelle? That we get ourselves in trouble with. All right. I think that when you look at shame, you have to begin to take responsibility for your actions, for your character defects, for your thinking errors. I don't care whatever you want to call them. Doesn't matter. Defense mechanisms. You got to take responsibility for how you don't interact well with the world. Take responsibility for what you've done. It's amazing how it's so easy for me to sit and tell you how my wife mistreats me. It's so easy to tell you how I don't get treated fairly. But what about what I do? I'm not the easiest man in the world to live with now, if you haven't figured that out already. I'm not the easiest man. So why do I want to focus on her rather than focus on me? It's easier because the world's not fair and I don't have to talk about how I feel and everything will be better. So looking at my character defects, if you will, what that does, it begins to get me to look at how I hurt other people rather than being so doggone self-centered and how that people hurt me. Well, that's a given. We know that. But what did you do to other people? In your moral indignation of that you have because what happened to you, you're taking it out on the world and you don't want to accept responsibility. Man, I tell you what, I had a therapist one time, I had her hooked like you wouldn't believe. My parents were bad people. Man, I tell you what, she bought into every bit of that and I kept using. And it's not her fault, but she never confronted. Then I get into treatment and that rotten, no good counselor I had told me exactly the way it went. And I said, well, here's what happened as a kid. He says, you know, I really feel bad, Don, that happened to you. Now let's talk about what you did to other people. What? Don't you understand? Don't you understand what happened to me? He said, Don, I already know that, and I really feel bad about it for you. But what have you done to other people that you hurt because of your self-centeredness? Well, you... Obviously, there's a place and there's a time to talk about what I have done, what's been done to me. But if you're going to get out of shame, you've got to begin to take a look at your thinking processes and what that's done to others so I can start becoming accountable or they'll be blaming forever. Yeah, your mom was rotten, and I'm sorry that happened to you. But because of the way you handle this, how are you hurting the people around you? So let's talk about what you do so we can come back and undo this mess. So I've got to identify what these quirks I have in my personality, and God knows we all have them, well, except for me. Oh, come on now, guys. I know that Joint Commission wants me over there very soon, but you're still going to have to laugh at my jokes. We'll be here till 1. All right. So, oh, man, let me tell you that. I tell you. Yeah, I saw that, yes. All right, so what happens when you look at step 5, it says what we're going to do is we're going to talk about these things. And what we're going to do it's amazing for me to recognize what my shortcomings are, but it's much more difficult to write that down and see my lousy handwriting and what I've done with these shortcomings. Now, you can't, the old days when we didn't have computers, huh? And nobody wanted to mess with the typewriters. So you wrote everything down. And so I always tell people, if you're going to do this, you need to write that in your own handwriting for step 5. That way you know it's you. You guys see my hand? That's why it's all on the... I can't write. So don't put it on a computer because you can avoid making it you. There's no ownership. But if it's your lousy handwriting, you know whose it is. It's now yours to keep. Then you talk about it with somebody. And it's not about what happened to you. It's not their character defects. It's yours. And then when I start talking about my character defects and how that's harmed other people, then it becomes I'm accepting responsibility for my future. I'm accepting responsibility for who I am. I now have the ability to manage my direction in life. I'm no longer a vessel that's just being bounced around from one thing to another because I've been misused, abused over and again and again. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a point we have to talk about that. But I'm saying, as long as I'm over here feeling sorry for them and okaying that, then there's no reason for them to change. There's no reason. Hell, if you guys want, I can tell you sob stories. Some of you guys can too. More people I can feel sorry for me. Man, I got it made. Oh my, she feels bad for me. She feels bad. Oh my God, it really has been bad. I really did have it bad. Instead of saying, what did I do? What did I do to my brother? What did I do to my sister? What did I do to my friends? Damn, I don't want to talk about it. You can come on in and stay over there if you want to. Okay. It's amazing how freeing that becomes. How that shame then begins to break. Because I'm realizing this is me. It's not this. It's me. Damn it, I hate that. But if I want to be free, I got to know that. I talk about somebody so they can help take a look at these character defects, and as a part of it, to look at the assets. What is there about me that is wonderful and that I take and don't take credit for it? Holding the door open for somebody. Can you imagine that? Doing that, I've been told, doesn't occur as often as it used to. My grandmother was alive, and if I didn't hold the door open for somebody coming in, she'd have knocked me into next month. If it's a girl, you're supposed to take care of these. You hold the door open for me, Donnie. That's what you do. My God, one time I was 13, and I didn't open that door, and she just stood there. Well, what's going on here? She looked at me, she says, you know better than this. Oh, yeah, okay. It's called respect. And not what did people not respect me, but how do I not respect them? How is it that I show respect to them? Did I hold the door open for this lady? Did I smile to this lady? Did I say a kind? And be able to see that I am a good person, not because of what I do, but because of who I am. Why would I hold the door open for somebody? Because I care. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you care about other human beings. And now let's see how we can teach you to care about you in the same way. But you got to recognize it. And how many times did you show people you cared about them? I knew a guy that he go fishing, and he would stop his vehicle, and he would take the turtles, if he saw one on the dirt road, put them in the drainage ditch so they wouldn't get hit. Well, the same guy got loaded one time, got a gun, threatened to kill somebody himself. That's a character defect and an asset. How does that play a part of his life, and see how he can use that as a strength and identify how it impacts him negative? And if it wasn't for that fifth step and going through those assets and giving examples of it, he couldn't recognize that. He found out that his sensitivity is great, but there are times he's oversensitive. And where's that come from? Way back on these silly rules. Then I got to make a decision I want to change. You know, people out there, they come to a therapist and they say all these wonderful things, but when it comes time to change, I'm not changing. I came here to dump on you, and you get to carry it. I ain't changing because look what they did to me. Oh, yeah, right. So they got to want to change. And then they got to find ways to do it. Whether it's through reading, going to support systems, coming to the therapist. By the way, it's so important to know medication does not make shame to go away. I mentioned that earlier. Medication does not make change. You'll fill them full of all the antidepressants you want, and that shame is going to continue to exist forever and ever and ever till death do they part. Step 10 says what we're going to do is that we're going to be honest. When I do well, I'm going to take credit for it. So if I say a kind word to this lady, if I can hold the door open, if she's struggling getting in her car, and I say, hey, can I help you? That's an asset. Why did you take time to hold that door? Because I cared. I saw somebody that was struggling, and now I'm going to take ownership for the feeling that I have, that I was told I couldn't have, but I now know I have, and it's okay to say it. And then, of course, the other side is if I don't do so well, to make sure that I'm monitoring that as well. And when I don't do well, I will take ownership. And that means to take responsibility means to say, that's my fault. Because see, when I start taking responsibility and say some things are my fault, then I don't have to run from it anymore. I don't have to be perfect. I verbalize that's my fault. And if the person around me says, oh, it's mine too, then I take my fault, what's my responsibility, and let them have their own. That's called boundaries. Which we already know that in this you don't have any boundaries. And then step 8 talks about what we're going to do is take a look at the people that have harmed in my past. I'm going to make some decisions to make some amends to them. Unless I'm going to, it doesn't mean you will, but put on a list of the people I've harmed. I hurt this lady, I hurt this man, I hurt that. Right? I got 30 people on my list that I harmed because of my obnoxiousness behavior, my lack of concern for other people. Because I'm so damn concerned about the horrible things that happened to me, I take it out on everybody else. Well, now I need to put people on that list of who I did that to. And become willing to go talk to them and say, hey, you know what? 2 years ago, blah, 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 I really screwed up. I want you to know that. Now, that's not humility, that's humbling. With shame, there is no humbling. It's all being humiliated. And a big difference. Humble means teachable. Humiliation is just what that means. Somehow I'm out there and my whole being's been ripped apart. I know, I forgot. Sorry. Then what we do is that if we determine, and we need other people to help with this, because some of us have all this shame inside, and what we want to do is get rid of it at everybody else's expenses. So we got Kevin over here, Keith, I'm sorry. We got Keith over here. He's my next door neighbor, and I managed to find a way to have an affair with his wife. Now the last thing I want to do is go run to him and say, hey, man, I kind of figured this out. I need to let people know how I hurt them. I slept with your wife here 3 weeks ago. Yeah, that's exactly. The big guy takes one punch. George Foreman, right there. Or Cassius Clay or Muhammad Ali, whoever did that. I don't remember who did, maybe both of them. So what are we going to do? Empathy. Shame doesn't have empathy. Shame is a self-centered act, and I don't care how I hurt anybody else. So I have to have empathy. And so I need somebody to help me understand that who it is I need to make these amends to so I don't step on everybody's toe at my own getting rid of the garbage inside of me. Puking on them rather than accepting responsibility. Anybody can puke on somebody. It's not healthy. It's not appropriate. And it's not respectful. Empathy. An amend is empathy. Saying I'm sorry is not empathy. Saying I apologize is not empathy. Anybody can apologize. Huh? Anybody can say I'm sorry. It's a whole lot more difficult to say to somebody, in a four-step empathy approach of saying to that person, I'd like to talk to you about something I did 2 years ago. And I have a lot of guilt, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of self-anger for the way I treated you when I said these things and tried to pick a fight on Christmas Eve with your family, if he's my brother. And because of that, we both went to jail. And you didn't do anything but to protect you and yours. I'm taking responsibility. There's nothing you ever did that could have caused me to behave that way. I don't care how many times, because you're bigger than me and you're older than I am, that none of that had anything to do with the way I treated you. It had to do with my self-centeredness. Now that's pretty tough to do, because I've just laid myself out there. And for God's sakes, I'm not asking for your forgiveness, because you may not be able to forgive me. And that's not what I want, but that's okay. It's understandable. You can't ask people to forgive you. I hate that. Because what if they're not wanting to forgive you? What if they're not capable? What if they're not in the spot that they can? And then what happens? What'd you do? You just did it to them again. So you don't ask for forgiveness. It's a gift that they decide to give to you or not give to you, not something that you deserve. It's nice to get it. I'd rather have that. And so then what you do is you don't tell them that you can understand, and think about it. I can imagine what you're going through. Really? You can imagine how I'm thinking and feeling? Explain that one to me. Well, I've been through that. Okay. You see, they already think they're unique, and so by you doing that, they're not going to hear you anyway. And so what happens is that no longer are you so self-centered. You say, I can't imagine the pain I must have caused you and the problems it caused you. I can't imagine. So now, again, I'm taking responsibility, so it isn't a matter of things not being fair or not fair anymore, because I'm accepting who I am and what I do and don't do. And then the last piece of that is I'm going to pray to my God or talk to my God, however you want to phrase it, that whatever pain you and your family have, go away, because it's not yours to carry. It's mine. I caused it. Hard thing to do. If he's my brother and I really did those things, he may look at me and say, you know what? Reason why you even come over to my house, because Mom's still alive. And when she's gone, you're gone. Or this great big guy here, he jumps up and says, my God, it's about time you behave like a big brother. And tears start rolling. Because I didn't apologize. I didn't bring it back to Dawn. I made it out that I did something to him and his family. And man, now I don't have to run from it anymore. I don't have to run from the pain that I created inside of me because I stepped outside my value belief system over and over and over again. I broke the rules. I rocked the boat. I talked how I felt. Oh, free of that little bit, aren't I? And then what I do, step 10, I just keep track of what's going on with me a day at a time, a moment at a time. And then the last of the steps is real simple. I treat people with dignity, honor, and respect. I'm not perfect. But when I do, when I don't, that's where I go to step 10 and go, oop, I screwed up. I know somebody, no matter what he does, no matter what you say to him, and you point out the facts that happened to him, because he wants this open dialogue, he cannot say he's wrong. That's not a good spot for anybody to be in. Oh, I possibly could be. That's minimizing, right? I guess I could have. What do you mean you guess? Now you're minimizing. So see, all his shame is out there for the world to see if you understand what shame's about. And you know then he will never be an effective leader. He can't be. Because he doesn't know who he is. And therapists are leaders. we lead our patients to healthiness. Nurses are leaders. Nurses do a whole lot more, hopefully, than give pills. Because if that's all they give, then that didn't mean anything. It's when the nurse puts their hand down and touches that human being and says, I'm with you. And you're in all that physical pain, and you're so damn afraid of what's coming next. And that nurse says, I'm with you. And that loneliness goes away, at least a little bit. And I know I'm okay, because I'm not by myself. And all the rules get broken again. I lost sight in this eye when I was 31 years of age. I don't see very well anyway. But I lost sight in this right eye. And that physician, I'll never forget him, Thaddeus Brown. When I went to him, he's an ophthalmologist, he said, well, you lost, this eye will never come back. And of course, at 31, I'm scared to death. What happens over here? Then I'm done. And I start getting tears, and he says, he put his hand on my shoulder. He says, no magic words. He says, I know it's painful. My God, a physician doing that. And I'd done cartwheels for that man, because he let me know he cared. And that's come back to what a good therapist is, and what a good nurse is, what a good preacher is, whatever you want to call him, what a good human being is. Helping people know they're not alone. We used to be able to do that when we got, until we spread out the way we do. And that's my opinion. I don't care what you do on the internet. You cannot possibly have the same impact on somebody when you're walking down and you see them hurting and you put your hand on their back, and and you put your hand on their back, and they know you care. I don't care about that. I mean, it's nice to be able to see people on the internet, if you will. It's kind of fun, but it ain't the same. All right, any questions? None? All right, one final joke. I promise I'll let you out of here. Not letting you out without a joke. No applause. All right. Anyway, there was this little bird who wanted to fly south, or who did not want to fly south for the summer or for the winter. So what he did, he says, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to endure this. But what happened? He'd never been in the cold before, and it got cold. And it got cold. He said, oh my God, this is a mistake. So he decides he's going to start flying south. Oh, his buddy had already left. So he starts flying south. It begins to rain, and the rain turns to ice, and he can't fly anymore, and he falls to the earth. And he thought, oh my God, this is it. I'm done. And out of the barn comes a horse. And this horse covers him with natural fertilizer. And he's going, oh my God, this is a horrible way to die. But you know, that fertilizer's warm. Brings warmth back to his body, melts the ice, and he's feeling pretty good now. This isn't so bad after all. Unfortunately, he begins to sing and chirp and do all the things that go along with feeling good, as a little bird might do. And out of that same barn became a cat. You see what's happening, don't you? So he starts digging, the cat does, where the noise comes from, finds the little bird, and eats him. 3 morals to the story. I cleared this joke, by the way. 3 morals to the story. 1, not everybody who shits on you is necessarily your enemy. Not everybody who takes shit off of you is necessarily your friend. And if you're warm and happy, even if it's some pile of shit, you keep your mouth shut. Thanks, guys. Enjoy.